I got to go back over and click on it again. There we go. All right. And let me know if you're not seeing it, so you should be seeing it right now.
I am seeing it.
All right, we're in chapter 9, verse 19 of 1 Corinthians. And I've entitled this in 19 through 23 as the main reason that Paul didn't support himself. And so Paul gives the main reason for it. And I think there's probably another unspoken reason, but this is, to me, is the primary reason. So let's read, let's start here. And I'm going to start with Chris, if you will. Shane, are you going to translate or will you just read for us?
I'm just going to read it. That's all right.
Okay, I'll let Jerry wants you to read for him. Jerry has vision problems, okay? So a little bit of vision problems and things get blurry for him, okay? So if you can read it for him, that would be good, and then he'll translate it, okay? Chris, can you do verse 19 for us?
Yes. Eleu theros gar on ek panton pasin himoton idulosa hina tus pleones curdeso. For though I was free from all, I became a servant myself to all that I might gain more.
Okay. Now, free is different. It's not, we don't really get the full force of being free here. What's the full force of this?
Is that from unloose?
No, not someone who's unloosed. That's a freed man, F-R-E-E-D, freedman. Oklahoma had a lot of Native Americans, we used to call them Indians, but Native Americans that had been slaves, black people who had been slaves to the Native Americans. And they're freedmen, and they were supposed to get travel rights, and they had some troubles over that here in Oklahoma. And freedmen, they call them. But right here, this is the word, someone who's never been a slave. He's free-born. He was born free. All of us in this class were born free. We don't understand slavery, and we have to get the full force of it. So I'm free, though I'm free, I'm a free man, and I'm free from all, out of all. I brought myself into what?
To a servant.
I became a slave. I became one that was under bondage. And so that was almost an unthinkable thing. It would be an unthinkable thing for a reasonable person to make himself a slave voluntarily. But here he does, and this is almost something that would, almost like an oxymoron, almost to the sense. Nobody would do that, but he was doing it in a spiritual sense, of course. So this is almost like a shocking thing when he's saying, when they hear that, it just doesn't go right with them when they hear it. Because nobody would do that except he did, and he becomes a slave. For what reason does he do it? So that he might what?
Gain many.
Gain the more, gain many. And the word thee is with the word more, and that's the greater quantity. I am of this conviction. I'm convinced that whatever happens providentially, God does, and I believe in providence. I'm convinced that it's going to work out because God will do what bring about what it will save the most souls. And I believe, I'm convinced of that. And I think Paul is thinking in the same way God thinks. What I'm going to do is what's going to save the most souls. And that's what I'm seeking to do. And I think he's thinking like God thinks when he does that. Any questions or comments
I'm
there?
kind of surprised that wasn't middle, but it was active.
Yeah. So he's actively involved in doing this. And I translated this, although I am not free, I am free from all men, or out of all men, see. I brought myself under bondage to all that I might gain the more. I might gain more people. So whatever is going to save the most souls. Now, again, we don't do anything sinful to do that, or deceptive, which would be a sinful thing. So that doesn't mean that we can do all kinds of stuff to get people to come for Bible study or gospel meetings. We do what's lawful, of course. Now he's gonna go into this and elaborate more in the next verse. James, could you do the next verse? Do you have any comments, James or Shane?
No, sir. On my behalf.
Okay, would you do the next verse for us, and then we'll.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Kai egonome tois Iudaios, os Iudaios, pina Iudaios, kerde so tois hupo nomon, os hupo nomon, pina tus hupo nomon, kerdeso. And I translated that, and I myself became to the Jews as a Jew in order that I might gain the Jews. To those under law as under law, being not myself under law, in order that I might gain those under law.
So he's going to elaborate on what he's going to do, how he put himself under bondage, see. So I became like a slave, and so I became to the Jews. What did I become?
As a Jew.
As a Jew. So Paul is going to do whatever needs to be done. Again, we must always remember he only did what was lawful. So he would do what was lawful. And to the Jews, I became as a Jew. So I think the Apostle Paul would observe the Sabbath day in order to not be offensive to the Jews around him. And whenever he was around Jews, I think he would, certainly I know he would use the Old Testament scriptures, and he did that, of course. But anything that the Jew did that was lawful, he would do it. And I think this maybe goes back to the point of him having Timothy circumcised.
And not to make him a proselyte, but to expedient.
To be able to bring Timothy into the synagogues where he was preaching and teaching, and maybe help influence the Jews. So I became a Jew. He observes customs which didn't violate the New Testament. We must not assume that he sinned in order to convert people. Now, right in the middle of your screen, I have it, Romans 6, 1 and 2. He didn't sin in any way to convert people, so we need to keep that in the back of our mind. That didn't happen, or he wasn't advocating. I'm not saying Paul was without flaws. He did have some. To them that are under the law, and as under the law, I became like I was under the law, in as far as I could, in order that, or hina, for the purpose I might gain them that are under the law. That would be who was under the law. It's pretty evident that that's who.
Gentiles.
The Jews were under the law, weren't they?
Oh, yeah, but I thought you meant the ones not
I'm
being.
trying to I'm trying to convert the Jews. So I lived and followed the law as much as I could without violating the New Testament. And under the Jews, I caused myself, and this is middle laws, to become as a Jew, that I might gain the Jews. And I think this is, and to them that are under the law, as under the law. Now, I think this is almost Hebrew parallelism poetry. Become as a Jew is to be like you're under the law. To gain the Jews is to gain them that are under the law. Under the law, becoming as a Jew would be the same. Okay, probably saying it in a different way and clarifying it. Right.
Later, he becomes the apostle to the Gentiles. So I'm seeing this. He did everything he knew to do to convert his brethren.
Yeah.
Even though he's known as the apostle of the Gentiles, he still loved his brethren.
Well, whenever he came to Jews, he preached to them too.
Mm-hmm.
I think what we see here, they were assigned regions, and there were Jews in his region, and he's going to try to convert those in his region. Peter was probably spending time in Jerusalem and other places where a lot of Jews were, primarily almost entirely Jews.
Okay.
That's the way I view it. And any apostle that would be assigned to another region, they think Parthenia was where Thomas was assigned to, and over into India. And if that's true, there were Jews in Parthenia according to Acts 1, Acts 2, and Acts 2, I'm sorry, in Acts 2. And so the Jews that were there, Thomas would take care of those Jews there, and Peter wouldn't have to go hunt them down. And so God's going to do it the most efficient way. So if there were Jews in another apostles' region, he would take care of them. That's the way I view it.
Okay.
When I see the spreading of the gospel.
While also teaching the Gentiles.
Yes, well, primarily to the Gentiles, but if there are any Jews around, we'll teach them too.
Yeah. Okay.
And of course, these apostles used the synagogues, and I think God providentially brought this about. The synagogues at first let a visiting Jew come in and preach in the synagogue. And so the apostles, of course, they're going to come in and they're allowed to preach in the synagogue. And whenever they do this, there's going to be some Jews that are honest-hearted, and what they're going to do is they're going to hear this message and obey it. Then you'll have a group from which to help you spread the gospel. And an apostle there, what can he do? Well, these people that are converted, the Holy Spirit knows their heart. And so he's going to give them the gifts they need to spread the gospel in that region. So it spreads like wildfire that way. That's the way I see it. And of course, a faithful Jew, has already got the moral code to be right. And your Gentiles are going to have to be changed out of their paganism to get them right. Okay. So that's why he went to the Jews first. I think the other apostles went to the Jews first for whatever Jews were in their region, assigned region.
Okay. It'd probably be easier to teach someone of your own background.
And they already had a background and knowledge of the Old Testament scriptures, and then they can become prophets in the church and help to spread it to the other people, the non-Jews.
Okay.
That's how I view the spread of the gospel. I think God did it that way.
Okay.
That makes sense?
It does. Yes. Thanks.
Any other questions, anybody?
Yes, sir. I was wondering with regard to 2 John verse 10, if anyone comes to you and does not bring this teaching, which the Jews did not, do not receive him into your house and do not give him a greeting. And then I would like to understand the connection there, or
I think seems to me about in the church. And so he's telling them if they don't bring this teaching, and that would mean that I think they were very hospitable. Someone comes in and they don't teach the truth, you don't let them come in and preach in the church. and teach.
So 2 John's exclusive to the church.
I think
teaching
it
in the
is.
Okay.
I think what he's saying is, with them, that's how I view it in him.
Okay, thank you.
Now, if a person is traveling, I think I can still be hospitable to someone who's not even a Christian. Be hospitable to them, but I'm certainly not going to give him a fellowship. I'm not going to bid him Godspeed in his wrongdoing. All right.
Well, it does, I have trouble connecting it to the church. If anyone comes to you and does not bring this teaching, and then it says after that, do not receive him into your house and do not give him a greeting. So it almost seems as if it's something that you personally need to do. I'm not sure how this ties in with the church is what I'm saying.
Okay. Well, let me look at it and we can talk about it next week. Does that be all right?
That's fine. I'm just having trouble tying it together myself here, so thought I'd ask.
People traveling through would stay with members of the church because that's where you had to stay, when they would pass through. And so you would have people like Apollos or somebody who might come and stay with you and then do some preaching and stuff. And that process you wouldn't do for those that were not teaching the truth. That makes
Okay.
sense.
That's how I view it. Shall we move on?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Appreciate your comments, Jerry.
I'll study on it before next week. We're going to come back to it, okay? All right,
All right.
verse 21. And Shane, can you read this for Jerry?
Yeah. Tois anamos hos.
Did we lose him?
Perhaps.
Tois anamos hos anamos me on anamos theo al ignomos Christo hina kedradeso animus.
Okay, and I translated it to the ones not under, and I added the law, just as not under the law, and I added the, and then I put in parentheses, not being without law to God, but in the law of Christ, and I added the word the, parentheses closed, so that I might gain the ones not under the law. So I added the.
Okay. So, to them that are without law and destitute of law, as without law. Now, I lived, what do you think Paul is saying here? Help me out.
I wasn't sure if this was people who were not, there were people who were not really faithful Jews, but I was thinking this was really Gentiles talking to, but it may be someone who's just not living according to the law.
Well, the word, I hadn't thought of it that way, but I thought of it as Gentiles is how I thought of it.
Well, I did that too. That's my first
impression.
inclination on it, but then the other was a possibility too.
Thayer gives it as destitute of law or departing from the law. See, so that could include either one of those, violator of the law. And I became as one without law. I've taken this to be Gentiles. That's how
Typically, when he is talking about the Gentiles, he uses the word ethnos in it, and he didn't. So that's why I decided, well, maybe it could be the other way too.
and not being without law. I think he said, as much as I could, I interpret this way, as much as I could I lived like a Gentile as much as I could without sinning.
The same with the Jews. I lived as much as I could like a Jew without sinning to the Jews, so that makes sense too.
And he says, but under law to Christ. Now, keep this in mind, it's all or Allah. And right on the middle of the screen, you can see it here. It was Allah. It adds in the case of Allah, and let me go down here and put my mouse down here. Right. A bit. The correcting member was not a member of the original set, it's a new element. So this is a different group by the word but. So what we have here, being without law to God, but I am not that, I'm actually under law to Christ. And so I'm under Christ's law. I take this to mean that he's talking about Gentiles. I lived like a Gentile as much as I could, so I wouldn't be offensive to them. That I might gain, and I did this for the purpose of gaining them that are without law, that I might convert the Gentiles. I think he takes into account the Jews in verse 20, Gentiles in verse 21. All right, that's my interpretation. But he always does what's lawful. And so he says, I am not without law. All right. So let's go back here. But under law to Christ. I'm under his law. We have some in the church that say there's no law. We're not under a law. Well, we are under law. Without law, there's no sin. Okay. And there is sin, so there has to be a law. It's a law of the New Testament. And so we might gain them that are without law. I think it's just referring to converting Gentiles. Any comments? Anybody got a different view of it? Now, again, I hadn't looked at it, as Jerry pointed out there, the possibility of this being Jews who were wayward, unfaithful Jews. Certainly, we know he's trying to convert them too. He's trying to convert anybody he could. His goal was to convert everybody.
Well, that's not, I start to say he was one of those wayward, but he wasn't. He was just mistaken.
Yeah.
But he was.
I translated to them that are without law as without law, not being without law to God, but under law to Christ, that I might gain them that are without law. Now, I footnoted these, and we got 3 foot, and it's all lawless in all of these, right? And that seems to fit the Gentiles, I'm sorry, much better, okay? Any questions or comments? Chris, could you do verse 22 for us, please?
Yes. Egenom main tois asten esen os astenes hina tus astenes kerdeso tois pasen gegona ta ponta hina pontos hinas so. To the weak I became as weak, so that the weak I might gain or win these things. To all I've become, To all I've become, the all that so by all means some save.
Okay. Now, weak people we've already seen sometimes would bind things and they didn't understand, and they didn't understand the full liberty that we had. So we saw that back in chapter 8. And we can also see it in Romans chapter 14 as well. we'll see it again, I think, in chapter 10 a little bit. So I became like the weak person, and I would see this. The eating of meats in Romans 14 was a problem, and some other things that are laid out in chapter 14 of Romans. Paul would give in order to teach these people, and it doesn't matter whether you don't eat certain meats or not. Of course, you're not binding it on other people, but Paul would give up that liberty he had in order to save some people. And of course, he's going to teach them out of their weakness, out of their ignorance, and get them where they don't have a problem with that anymore. So I do it so I can save people. Now, look at this. Let's go back and look at it on the screen here. I became. This is in the middle voice, aorist middle. Remember the aorist, the middle and passive are different in form. So it's not middle passive, it's middle. So I caused myself to become as weak. So I brought myself to this point to cause myself to do it. Not just that I was forced to do it, I actually did this of my own will for the purpose that I might gain. So again, he's taking his own will and bending it and letting it be shaped by this overriding desire to gain people to Christ. And so that's what I see here. Any comments or questions?
I view that weak, what he's talking about, the weak, he didn't come in as an apostle and tell them this is what God says, you got to do it. He just worked on them as using examples of, without that kind of authoritative deal that might just drive them away or frighten them away or something,
That's entirely possible too, yeah.
I mean,
It's because sometimes we need to be aware of how we approach people. I think the apostles were given guidance in what and how they would speak, and this is in Matthew, I think, 10:19-21. Both how and what they spoke would be given to them when they spoke. So they would approach in the most advantageous way to convert people. We don't have that, so we have to study and try to be sure we are always doing it in the right way. And of course, it stems from a right attitude. But sometimes I say something and it's the wrong thing to say. Have you ever done that? I sure have. But I don't think the apostles did because the Spirit was guiding them. But we need to think about what we're going to say and try to say it in the most loving and kind way and let ourselves understand it. That we need to be careful about the words and how we say things. I've said some things. I said one time from the pulpit here at Barnes, I said, some people are ignorant of God's word on this point. And what we need to do is just teach them. And so some people got upset with me. You calling me ignorant? Well, ignorant just means you don't know. And they were interpreted to mean you're stupid, And so what I should have defined ignorant when I used it, and I should have said, maybe not even use the word ignorant. I should have just said people don't understand. That might have been clearer. But some people got upset with me over it. This was 20 years ago. So sometimes you need to be careful. Some words can be misinterpreted. And we don't want to even drive people away accidentally, okay? The people are not knowledgeable. They don't know very much, and we need to be careful how we approach them. And all means that I might by all means save some, and that's future tense. Save certain ones. This is indefinite, and it's just some, not speaking to anyone particularly, it assumes we must not assume that Paul committed any sin in order to convert the lost. I'm not saying did he commit sin, but I'm saying he's not going to do that in order to convert the lost. If he did do it, then we don't have him as a pattern, because we should never do sin that good would come. Now we get that from the book of Romans. To the weak, I cause myself to become weak. I translated it like the middle voice, that I might gain the weak. I have become all things to all men, that I might by all means save some. Let's look back here. I became. This is perfect tense. I became perfect tense and still are. I did this in the past and I'm still doing it. So when I translated it, I have become, I went ahead and put have in there because of that perfect tense. And that makes sense. The thrust of that perfect, remember, is I just can't get it fully into English. So I became and still am. I'm still doing it.
Did you say one of the words was future? I missed that if you did.
Save, gain,
I might say.
save some, so.
Oh, I put subjective on that.
That's,
But it's future, because the S is future.
Yeah.
The sigma.
yeah.
So it's,
Could be either or.
I thought that was subjective, but future works.
Enoch. Let's see here. I don't think Enoch goes with, it might go with the subjunctive, but I don't think so.
Oh, that, yeah, that's my,
Study on that.
I took it as future, but I put them both down and chose
I
future.
think the form could be either. All right, I think it could be. But I went ahead and put it as future.
Okay.
I might, in the future, save some. All right. Okay, that's a good point. Well, I'll study it out before next week and look at it again.
I hedged it. I said I might save some, so I put both subjunctive and future in there.
Well, the subjunctive does with the will, but
In order that I might.
but his will is to do it.
Yeah.
So future maybe makes more sense.
Right.
I don't know. I appreciate that. I didn't catch
Okay,
that.
who was the last one that read?
I did that one.
Chris? Okay, back to James. James, can you do verse 23?
Yes, sir. Tuto de poio dia to euangelion. Kina sun koinonos autu genomai. And I translated that, and this I do on account of the gospel, in order that I might become a partner of it.
Okay. Might become a partner.
Yes,
That's
sir.
pretty good. It's soon and joint participation, see, a partner. That's not a bad translation. And this I do this, and from poio, I do all things, all of this. And it's translated all things here, but by the American Standard. But I'm not sure. I think some of the manuscripts may have the word all in there. Let me go back and take a look at it. All right. All things. I'm going to check this out again.
Yeah. One manuscript has Ponta.
One manuscript.
I'm seeing here Ponta de Foyo.
Yeah, there's different manuscripts. Majority text and F35 and Textus Receptus and the manuscripts on the bottom of the screen, the Syriac, all the Syriac manuscripts, all of them read don't have this word all in there, right? But I do all things. But I do all. American Standard has it in there, and all things, all these things, say, right? For the gospel's sake. And of course, that's for the sake of spreading the gospel and he's not affecting the gospel, he's spreading the gospel. And so I'm doing this for the sake of spreading the gospel, so I'll be a joint participant or a partner. How did you render that, James?
I rendered it, I might become a partner of it.
Okay, a partner. That's
Yes, sir.
a good thing. All right. Joint partner is how they are listed. Joint participation, joint fellowship with it, joined together with it. And that word is found in Romans 11:17, here in Philippians 1:7, and Revelation 1:9 as well. So again, what you can do if you're kind of in a quandary about how to render it, kind of look at how it's used in those verses. That might give you some help as to see the possible ways it can be rendered other than the lexicons. Okay.
On the last of that, I put, so that I might be a fellow partaker of this salvation. And I added salvation, which was the subject of the previous sentence, that he wanted them to be saved, so he wanted to be a fellow partaker. And so I added the salvation in parentheses to go with verse 22.
Yeah, it has to refer to something.
Yeah, and it just kind of left it open, so I chose salvation because that was what you can be a fellow partaker of. If he wants to save them, so he wants to be a fellow partaker, and I assumed that was salvation.
It very easily could be thereof. It has to reach back to the prior verse, is what it has to be. Okay. All right, any questions? Now, that got us to the end of that section. Now, this next section, I've styled it, got it, put it centered on the screen. My outline of it, I claim that Paul is using an example of one participating in the games now. So he changes his figure of speech to illustrate the need of giving up one's liberty for the higher good. So he's going to give us another illustration of giving up your liberty, right? Verse 24 through 27. I don't think we can get all of those verses rendered tonight, but we could get several of them. Okay, let's take verse 24, and I've forgotten who read last. James, were you the last one?
Yes, sir.
Shane, can you read that in the Greek text for us, please?
Uk audete hotioi in stadio tricantes pantes min trecusen este labenai tobraben on utos tricete hina katalabete.
Okay, and I translated, you know, don't you, that the ones running a race all run, but, and I added word only, one takes the prize. Therefore, all, and I added all of you, run so that you, and I added all, may take the prize.
Okay. So, uk audate hoti, the first three words, always introduce an argument, right? Every time they're found. Now they're in this form in all times except one, when Pontius Pilate is speaking to Jesus, and it's not plural, it's singular. But the audate is singular. This is plural, see? And so that's the only difference in that passage. I think I may have, yeah, right on the middle of the screen are all the passages where that expression is found. Okay? But we won't worry about them. You can look that up. We paused long enough for people to pause there and watch it on YouTube. They can see it. And oidate is, don't you see with the eye of the mind? And you'll hear people say, oh, I see now. And what they mean is, I understand this. I have this understanding. Don't you understand? And would you have a question with ooh? It always expects a yes answer. You understand, don't you? You know, don't you? that what? Well, that the ones, now he's going to use an argument. This is introducing his argument. They that run in a race, and I played some sports in high school, played 1 year of college baseball, on the team. And whenever I ran in track, you really had to work at it, because everybody's trying to get that first place. So,
Run is a participle. That's why I put running, because they're actively they're in the process of running a race.
Yeah.
In the figure.
It's actually the ones running is how it would be literally translated. The ones running in the stadium, in the stadia, in the stadium, stadion. And so they're running in that stadium, that race course.
Oh, yeah, I had the word a race.
Indeed, there's men, and that's probably not even translated, it's just emphasis. They all of them indeed, they're going to run, right? And so now they indeed run, all of them run, but there's only one going to get the first prize, right? That's real easy. The word one, you look at the accent mark on it, and it's not ace, it's not unto, it's ace. That's the cardinal number, one. There's cardinal numbers, ordinal numbers, and there's three kinds of numbers, okay? And so we have a cardinal number like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the counting number, that's the way I like to call them. One is going to receive, and this is lambano, and that's a self-appropriated taking. And it's not declamai, say, welcome it. That's to welcome something, receive it with welcome. But this is lambano, it's a self-prompted taking. He's going to reach out and work at it. Right at the bottom of the screen, about 4 lines up, suggestion of self-prompted taking, and here's lambano.
I view that as leaning forward.
Yeah, he's going to really work at it. He's trying to get that prize. So I don't think it's stressing. I think we miss the point if we say, well, there's only one going to win the race. I think he drops off from this, and every one of us are striving to win. And I think what we are striving against is not one another, but we're striving against Satan. I think we're striving against forces that would cause us not to finish that race. I think the race is probably like a marathon rather than a sprint. I ran the quarter mile, 4:40, and I have a lot of type 2 muscles. I didn't know that. They're quick, but I'll tire out. When I ran a mile, it just wore me out. It just wear me out good. But a quarter mile, I could run pretty good, but then I got kind of hurting a little bit. So they got the prize, and that's awarded to the victor of the games. Now, we think of a race as one person gets first place, but I think he's not stressing that point here. He's stressing the winning and finishing the race more than actually just one person wins now.
When I was in basic training, running was not something I did well. And it took a lot for me to make the mile run with a pack and boots and blouse deals and all that kind of stuff. And you had to do it in 8 minutes and 30 seconds. So the winner was the ones who got to graduate from basics. So you had to do it in 8 minutes and 30 seconds. You couldn't.
Yeah.
So everybody ran, and you tried, your best to do that. But
we ran on the sandy beaches and it's called a beach.
But that's kind of what I view as the Christian race is we all got to get there. We got to finish.
Yeah. All right. So one receiveth, I don't think it's just one person's going to win and get this prize.
But you run like it is.
I think it's somebody's going to receive going to win this going to win this prize, and the prize is for anybody that finishes the race in 8 minutes or whatever it was. What was
8 minutes and 30 seconds. What
was
we
that
had
a
at
mile?
that time.
Was that a mile?
Yeah.
Mile with the full pack on.
Well, packing boots and all
Yeah.
that. Not the tennis shoes they do now.
Well, we had our boondockers, we call them shoes, high top shoes. We ran in the sand.
Yeah, I just view this as you run like you only one was going to win, but that's how you should strive.
Yeah. He receives that prize. Our prize is eternal life. That's what it is. Even so, here it says, he tells them, you run. Now, and run in order that, for the purpose of that, you may attain. Now, this is subjunctive mood. You may attain what?
And you use plural, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ye may obtain, not just one person obtain it, all of you. All of you run so that you obtain it. I think Jerry's illustration is real good. Everybody that finished it in the time frame they were awarded. They got to graduate from boot camp. If you didn't finish
Otherwise,
it,
you got to
you
recycle.
got to recycle through boot camp again, and that was not fun.
It was a great incentive to run, even if you hurt.
Did many people have to do that?
What's that?
Did many people have to go through again?
No, I was one of the slowest, and my company commander ran beside me and threatened to kick me all the way, you know. And then he would talk real sweet to me and nice to me and everything. Then he would threaten me. He said, "One more step, just keep on. One more step, you know." And I did. So my company commander got me through.
Well, you gotta have, you just gotta ignore the pain and go on. That's what you gotta do.
Mhm.
All right. I think 2 Timothy 2:5 is if also a man contended against you is not crowned except he have contended lawfully. So we've got rules to go by in this race too. We can't cheat, we can't cut corners, and so that's something else we need to remember. I translated this, know ye not that the ones running in the race, indeed they all run, but one receives the prize. Even so run. And the one that receives the prize, I think, is not just one person, but I think it's one who receives the prize is the one who finishes that race and goes by the rules. Even so run that you may attain. So he's telling all of them to run. There's only one person we're running the Christian race, only one person is going to get the prize, and all the rest of us are going to lose it, even though we're striving to win it. I think that misses the whole point of it.
I think you're just supposed to run like you were the only one was going to get it, but that's how much effort you'd put into it.
Any questions? All right. Well, we're about out of time. We're down to about a minute and a half for the class to be over. Why don't we start with verse 25 in next week? And this is a man striving in the games. And so when you do that, you have a great desire to win. You're going to really work at it. There's a girl I knew in high school, and she ran in the Olympics. She finished 6th, I think. But that was pretty good in the Olympics. She finished 6th. She didn't get a medal, but she was on the team, and she ran against those Russian gals and other Germans, East Germans, you know. But she finished, I think, 6th out of about, what was it, 12, 15 running in each race. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Anyhow, I knew her. Let's see. Anyhow, any questions? All right, we're going to stop recording now.